is In the Loop. I'm Bianca Fascini in for Christian Bryant. Here's what we have for you this episode. The industry for in vitro fertilization is growing fast, but regulation hasn't kept up. And some experts say that's a recipe for mix-ups and exploitation. Plus, millions of Americans traveling to see family and friends over the coming months. We've got the details on what to expect at the airport this pandemic's second holiday season. But first, let's start with water. Most of us might take for granted that we have easy access to clean running water, but in many parts of the US, that's not a guarantee. Aging infrastructure can often spread lead or other toxic chemicals into a community's water supply. We saw it in Flint, Michigan, where for nearly 5 years, residents had water contaminated with high levels of lead. And now, across the state in Benton Harbor, Michigan, residents have been using bottled water for more than a month after the state reported high levels of lead in its water. Benton Harbor has dealt with water issues as far back as 2018, but activists say there's been little urgency from the state to fix the problem. It's also worth noting here the dramatic contrast to another town right across the river in St. Joseph. St. Joseph has a very low poverty rate with an 85% white population and access to clean water. Benton Harbor has more than 45% of residents living below the poverty line. 85% of its population is Black, and it's struggled for years with contaminated water. But now there seems to be momentum for change. Last month, the EPA directed the city to fix its drinking water infrastructure. That move inspired aid from state and federal authorities to dig up lead pipes starting last week. In total, there are between 3,000 and 6,000 pipes to dig up. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer said she hopes the state can replace all the lead service lines within 18 months. A project expected to cost up to $30 million. 18 months is still a long time to wait for clean water, though. And while residents try to press on, Newsy producer Meg Hilling went to Benton Harbor to report from the scene. Here's what she found.
It's the question on everyone's mind in Benton Harbor, Michigan.
I wonder how much have I taken in already as far as the lead and stuff like that.
Since the end of September, residents in this predominantly Black community in southwestern Michigan have been lining up on a weekly basis to pick up bottled water at distribution sites around town. The reason? Residents had finally put enough pressure on state and local officials to start addressing water tests from 3 years earlier that have found alarmingly high levels of lead in the town's water. Lead exposure has been shown to contribute to heart disease and kidney failure. In children, it's been connected to learning disabilities and impulse control issues.
Even as cold as it is, we got to cook with it and wash with it and everything. And
for almost 2 months now, Sandra Ray says she's been coming by water distribution sites in order to take care of the 6 people and 2 dogs in her house.
I pick the kids up from school or something, or drop them off and then come and get it, or else pick them up and then come and get the water. So it's like kind of like going to work. You know, you got to do it.
Even though folks weren't advised by state health officials to stop drinking and cooking with the water coming out of their taps until the end of September, Eugene Branch says he's been avoiding the water for years.
I've been going out to a spring out on M140 and getting water.
To put into perspective just how serious the aged infrastructure and resulting lead contamination problem is in Benton Harbor, take a look at this map created with data from the city's website. The highlighted red areas represent where there are confirmed or assumed lead service lines that will need to be replaced. That's going to cost around $30 million.
There has been 135 cases that have been given out since we started.
Kim Smith-Oldham and her team at the Southwest Michigan Community Action Agency have been one of a handful of agencies working to distribute clean water. The state has also given out water filters to residents, and home deliveries are being made for those who can't physically make it to distribution sites.
At first, we were the boots on the ground, and then it grew from there. We partnered with Department of Health and Human Services, the City of Benton Harbor, and also Southwest Michigan United Way, and they get our volunteers.
She says this is a new kind of need for this community.
This is what we do. I mean, we distribute food and commodities, so it was just a shift, but a bigger shift. You know, we ended up getting another part of a warehouse so we could hold the water.
Even though the state has pledged to replace all the lead pipes in Benton Harbor within the next 18 months, many residents come and pick up water today say they're not convinced.
Hell no. Hell no. They ain't gonna get it in 18 months. It's gonna take a month to do one street.
18 months, I doubt it. I doubt it, but I hope so, though. I'm hoping.
Earlier this month, the town began to dig up and replace some of the pipes. A welcome sight, but not a quick fix solution, given that many folks say they'll likely have to cook Thanksgiving dinner with bottled water.
I guess you're gonna have to use my spring water and my bottled water.
I just wish it didn't have to take so long, but you know, what can you say? It's got to be, it's got to get done, and it'll be better for everybody here.
So for now, the pickups will continue until distribution teams say they're no longer needed.
As long as Department of Health and Human Services needs us to hand out water.
Meg Hilling, Newsy, Benton Harbor, Michigan.
We're going to stay on this story, but move over to the East Coast, where one city has become a surprising model of how to safely replace its lead pipes. In Newark, New Jersey, contaminated water also drew attention around 2018, and after organized pressure from grassroots activists, the city finally took on a 10-year plan to replace the pipes. But only 3 years later, 22,000 lines have already been replaced. Newsy reporter Axel Tercios tells us more about the success story and how this can be a roadmap for other cities around the country.
This massive lead pipe replacement project has been ongoing for nearly 3 years, but as Newark, New Jersey nears the completion of the replacement project, there are millions of lead water lines around the nation that are putting the lives of American children in danger. Some experts are calling it a national crisis.
As construction workers dig into another street in Newark, city residents breathe a sigh of relief, knowing that this massive construction project will bring a healthier future for the next generation. To tackle the problem, most of the dangerous lead-lined pipes that bring water to homes and businesses have been replaced with copper pipes. A study in Newark conducted by the state found lead levels to be nearly 3 times what federal rules deem to be safe.
I was flabbergasted. I was dumbfounded.
Yvette Jordan has lived in Newark for over 30 years. She was shocked at the lead levels in Newark's water.
We were ignorant, we were naive, and based on that naivete, I think the city at the time just said, okay, we're not saying anything about these lead exceedances, and that was a problem.
At first, Newark, New Jersey's largest city, was denying the problem to its residents.
There is no safe level of lead.
Eric Olsen from the Natural Resources Defense Council, a nonprofit environmental advocacy group, helps influence policy decision on drinking water standards.
What we've seen is the city going from denying they had an issue, really from being a laggard to being a leader. They have now turned around and they are leading the charge to replace all their lead pipes very quickly, much faster than other cities.
In 3 years, 22,000 water service lines have been replaced. That amount of work was projected to take 10 years.
28,500 homes that we visited, and we removed 22,345 lead service lines as of Friday. Those other houses didn't need a replacement.
Kareem Adim has directed the progress of the city's pipe replacement.
We wanted to make sure we did our due diligence and ease the anxiety of homeowners, or tenants, or residents, and letting them know that they didn't have a lead service line by eventually going there and excavating a test pit to show them that they didn't have a lead service line.
The crews can take up to 5 hours to remove a single pipeline. First, they have to dig holes, then they have to determine the best way to remove them based on wear. Some of the pipes are even a century old, like this one that they just removed. Crews are working on about 120 sites a day throughout the city.
Newark's progress is now seen by some as a redemption for Mayor Ras Baraka. In 2018, Baraka faced criticism after the NRDC sued, saying the city had failed to monitor lead levels in its pipes and that it had minimized the crisis to the community. At the time, the mayor was running for re-election and Newark was fighting to become home to Amazon's headquarters. Yvette Jordan joined the NRDC's lawsuit.
I think all of the confluence of those events was affecting how our mayor reacted, and that non-reaction is what really made us angry.
At the beginning, the residents were upset. They felt that the city was ignoring their calls. Do you think that now, after starting and doing this replacement program so fast, is it much more like a lesson learned for the city?
Well, the biggest lesson learned for the city is showing that with the political will and the funding that we can remove lead service lines and be, the transparency like we're here today. That national model can help other cities like Newark, right? And just being transparent about what we went through, lessons learned. We're sharing that information throughout the country.
The consumption of lead is harmful to all, but can be extremely dangerous to children's health.
Lead is a very dangerous poison to the brains of developing children especially. So it can actually cause lower IQ, it can cause them to have problems with learning, it can cause problems with control of their behavior. It's even been linked to things like criminal behavior later in life.
For adult health,
so it can affect their kidneys and also has been linked to blood pressure problems and cardiovascular disease, even a lot of deaths from cardiovascular disease in adults. So it's a double whammy. It both hits the young children, even in the mother's womb, and it hits adults.
The NRDC estimates about 12 million lead service lines in the U.S. Half of the states in the country do not track the lead in their territories. A new NRDC analysis of the most recent Environmental Protection Agency data shows that between January 1st, 2018 and December 31st, 2020, 186 million people, a staggering 56% of the country's population, used drinking water systems with lead levels exceeding the level recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics. The way lead gets into tap water is usually through service lines. When water leaves the treatment plant, it travels through water mains called service lines. Most homes have lead pipes that connect to service lines. If the water is not treated well, it eats away the inside of the pipe. That causes flaking of the material, and ultimately the lead particles dissolve into the drinking water.
Everybody's looking at Newark as a national example. How do you see them?
The national model is when all of the people come together, and it wasn't until the community started rising up and saying, we need this, that the city was addressing it.
President Joe Biden's recently signed infrastructure bill contains $15 billion to replace water pipes across the nation. Eric Olson from the Natural Resources Defense Council told me that's still not enough to replace all pipes. Axel Trusius, Newark, New Jersey, Newsy.
Thank you for that, Axel. By the way, to wrap this back around to where we started, just this week, a federal judge finally approved a settlement worth $626 million for a case brought by tens of thousands of residents in Flint, Michigan. Newsy's Morning Rush spoke to Flint Mayor Sheldon Neely about that this morning. Here's part of that interview.
What does this settlement mean to you and to all residents of Flint?
Well, forgive the oxymoron, but this is the first final steps into resolving the issue of this water crisis in our community. It's been a long time, more than 8 years here. Moving this community forward is so paramount to making sure that we can get the steps to recovery for these families that were negatively impacted by the poor quality of water.
Mayor Neely tells Newsy that about 80% of the settlement money will go toward the children impacted by Flint's water crisis. After a quick break here, we'll run through today's top trending stories for you, from a TikTok legal challenge to a new vaccine in the works for Alzheimer's. That's up next.
What do you think the future looks like?
From Newsy, renowned journalists and filmmakers, comes a celebration of storytelling.
Are we in a killer robots arms race right now?
When the suspect admits to it.
I'm not going to argue the law with you.
New features every week. Newsy Docs presents Sunday nights at 9/8 Central, only on Newsy.
Taylor Swift may still be taking over our news feeds, but there are some other trending topics to discuss too. Were you one of the billions of people using TikTok before October of this year? If the answer is yes, you might be entitled to compensation. A $92 million lawsuit claims TikTok violated Illinois' Biometric Information Privacy Act, which says people can sue companies that collect their data without permission. Court documents allege the company violated state and federal law by collecting and using personal data in the app. TikTok denies the allegations, but documents show its parent company reached the settlement earlier this year. On Monday, users were given a notice that directed them to a website to file a claim for compensation. We can add Christmas trees to the list of everything that's on back order this year, but maybe not due to the reason you're thinking of.
With the pre-cut trees, there is a national shortage, so there's just a fewer quantity of trees with a higher demand, and then the shipping issues are just complicating it even a little more.
The shortage for most things these days, like cars or furniture, are due to supply chain backlogs. But another reason Christmas trees are in low supply is due to climate change. All across Oregon, the country's biggest tree exporter, the farms are taking a serious hit. One farm owner told the Oregonian that he's lost 90% of his crop this year because of extreme heat. Another grower told the New York Times that heat wave destruction cost him an estimated $100,000 in business. In normal times, the alternative to this might be to buy a fake tree, but those, of course, are also in short supply right now. The first ever nasal vaccine for Alzheimer's is officially in the works. Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston said it's still in clinical trials, but if found effective, the vaccine could help prevent Alzheimer's and treat patients already diagnosed with it. If it's successful, it would be huge news for the millions of Americans who have this disease. 5.8 million to be exact, and their loved ones, because there's currently no cure for it. Los Angeles sports fans will be getting a newly named arena for Christmas this year, whether they like it or not. The famed Staples Center in downtown LA, home to the city's NBA, WNBA, and NHL teams, will become Crypto.com Arena on December 25th. The name change is costing the crypto platform $700 million. It's the crypto industry's latest foray into professional sports. A few months ago, American Airlines Arena in Miami became FTX Arena, named for another crypto exchange. Thanksgiving is next week, and many of you have probably either booked or are planning your travel plans for the holidays. If you're flying, it might be the first time you've dealt with flying during the holidays and during a pandemic. Newsy is partnering with the Washington Post to bring you more in-depth reporting and analysis, and they bring us a rundown of what you can expect if you're flying for the holidays.
The second line is stepping off, and they're dancing in the streets of Mobile, Alabama, as guests of a new airline celebrate the delivery of its first new plane from Airbus, the European aerospace giant that's now turning out aircraft on U.S. soil. As the world shakes off a pandemic that decimated the travel industry, there is optimism here.
Airlines are saying passengers are back. We'd like those airplanes maybe a little bit sooner if possible.
The order books for new planes, full. U.S. and Canadian airlines alone have more than 850 Airbus narrow-body planes coming, the kind coming out of Mobile. But there is also worry heading into the holidays, with airlines loading up on flights, packing in passengers, trying to make money again.
I have been in line for almost an hour and have not moved.
It just got canceled on us. We don't know what to do.
So far, multiple airlines have had multiple meltdowns. American, Spirit, Southwest. Schedules are tight and there's a scramble for workers. So any disruptions, from weather to computer system outages, cascade across the network.
We have never seen anything like this happen in the U.S. airline industry before. We've seen bad weather hit. We've seen strikes. We've seen other issues affect the airline industry, but never one where airlines just seem to be unraveling as businesses in front of our eyes.
U.S. airlines say they're flying almost as full as they were in 2019, before the pandemic, when traffic was at an all-time high. What hasn't quite returned? Business travel and those long overseas flights. But that's changing. At London's Heathrow Airport, these two planes are taking off at the same time, heading for New York, the day the U.S. border reopened to fully vaccinated international visitors, a day that also saw reunions of long-separated loved ones. It has United Airlines opening this swanky new lounge at Washington's Dulles Airport, for its top-paying premium passengers on those long-haul flights. Showers, sleeping, and sit-down dining included.
Now, coming out of the pandemic, we have relaunched our growth plan, and having this Polaris Lounge in this particular location is part of that growth.
The pandemic even spawned several new airlines, like Breeze, from the founder of JetBlue, seeing opportunity to fly to cities with maybe not so much service. Breeze has ordered 80 of these new, smaller Airbus planes that can fly great distances with more fuel-efficient engines. 2 more already on the final assembly line.
I think with vaccines and natural immunity and all the things that are happening and the caseloads going down, I think we're past the worst of it. And I think there's a lot of pent-up demand. And so we're seeing a lot of traffic.
On board, if you haven't flown in a while, some features that are now becoming common. Larger overhead bins, designed to hold everyone's carry-ons. Power outlets at every seat for your devices. But expect every seat to be filled. Airlines stopped blocking seats over COVID concerns months ago. And expect limited onboard service with no alcohol. Most airlines still aren't selling it. On the ground and in the air, masks are still mandatory. And some passengers are still unruly. Inside airports, signs of life again. A year ago, part of this concourse in Atlanta, one of the world's busiest, walled off with so few flying. This is what it looks like now. When it comes to getting something to eat or drink, that should be easier with more places open. Washington's Reagan National Airport is opening new security screening halls, putting all of this behind TSA. You may also see new CT scanners for baggage and automated belts and bins, trying to move things along. In Denver, a terminal redo in ticketing and security. U.S. airlines have loaded up on flights to the slopes and to the sand. They'll be flying more people than they have in several years, but with 25,000 fewer airline workers, according to government statistics.
Unfortunately, we can't ignore the risk of airlines not having enough people ready to work. I am concerned that the revenue side of the airline isn't always looking at the operational side of the airline.
The big gamble, with all this flying in the coming season, everything flows smoothly. Like jazz down the streets of Mobile.
Thanks to the Washington Post for that. After a quick break, we'll have more on how one new program is trying to help prisoners with substance abuse access treatment outside of the prison walls. A lot of incarcerated people go into prison with a substance abuse disorder. While they may receive some type of treatment while they're there, they're likely to return to drug use when they're released. But there's a new program that takes a different approach to combating this issue. National correspondent Bo Evans tells us about medically assisted treatment programs that are expanding across the country and helping people break addictions even after they leave prison.
And there's a term in there it's called frequent flyers, for those who return and come back, and those who return and come back. And I didn't want to be a frequent flyer.
Stephanie Harvey is breathing in the fall air. Today she's free, and she's grateful for that.
My story is a long, convoluted story, and it involves, some not good decisions. I was arrested for a DUI, and I did 90 days in Denver County.
It wasn't her first DUI or her first attempt at treatment. She says at first her mindset was the same. Do what she always does.
My head was fear, confusion. How can I get out of it? How can I skate through it? Do the minimal, check the boxes, be done.
But when she went to jail this time, she was given a new opportunity that was different than her previous experiences with outpatient rehab. It's called MAT, or medically assisted treatment.
Suboxone or naltrexone, Vivitrol, which we use for opioid use disorder and alcohol use disorder. But so just introducing them to these medications, starting them on these medications, then wanting them to continue with these medications.
Valencia Peterson is a psychiatric physician's assistant with Denver Health, and she spends her time working with patients in the Denver city and county jails. The medications she's listed are given to patients and can help them break addictions.
We help get patients started on medications and start counseling while they're in the jails with the idea that they'll follow up outpatient after they're released for continuity of care.
Drug treatment in the prison system is not a new concept, but the use of MAT programs is. In 2019, there were only 43 adult drug courts that approved of MAT programs. There are more than 3,500 drug courts in the U.S. Another difference from the status quo is partnering with outside treatment programs once inmates are released.
We know the risk is high when they release. Their tolerance decreases while they're in the facility, and so we definitely want to help save lives, and so we start them on the medication while they're with us, and then we connect them to an outpatient clinic to continue that care and give a warm handoff.
So through the MAP program, I come to Denver Health. I see a peer support specialist who completely exceeds all expectations as far as encouragement, support, shared stories, consistency, and I get just a little teary because I've never had this before.
Stephanie says she knows this is just the beginning of her recovery and that tough days are ahead, but she wants to make the most of this opportunity and take advantage of the resources she's been given and the people she meets along the way.
It's called J2C, Jail to Community, so...
Oh, I have 16 years sober.
You do?
Yeah.
Wow.
I was a drunk in New York City.
I was a drunk in Colorado, and now I'm sober talking to you, petting your dogs.
I'm Bo Evans reporting.
While treatment programs work to help people with addiction today, there's a new hope for the addiction treatment options of tomorrow. National reporter Chloe Nordquist has the story.
All my life, I've been working on, drugs of abuse, like substance use disorder, etc.
Addiction scientist Marco Pravatoni has been working on a vaccine for opioid use for more than a decade. His research, conducted at the University of Minnesota, as seen in this footage they provided.
It's a synthetic vaccine.
The vaccine tells the body to make antibodies for oxycodone.
These antibodies will be selective for the target opioids.
The antibodies will bind to the oxycodone molecule and prevent it from getting into the brain. It should blunt the effects of the oxycodone.
This prevents the drug high and rewarding properties. Sandra Comer is leading the clinical trials. Right now, the vaccine for oxycodone addiction is in a phase 1 clinical trial, as approved by the FDA.
This phase 1 study is really typically focused on safety, and that study is intending to enroll anywhere between 12 and 24 subjects.
And this vaccine will work with other treatments that are currently out there.
What we're hoping is that if we give a combination of the vaccine plus methadone, for example, and if somebody relapses after a few months, vaccine-generated antibodies will still provide some protection against overdose.
Emergency physician Dr. Donald Stater says he can see this new novel solution being helpful.
We do not know if this is going to be significant in our patient population, but I think that it's very promising. We know opioid addiction, even in the midst of the COVID pandemic we're currently facing, is still the #1 killer of Americans under the age of 50. We do see the ravages of the opioid crisis every day in terms of patients who have overdosed, in terms of patients who've come to us in withdrawal, or patients coming to us seeking help for an opioid use disorder. And I will tell you that it has gotten much, much worse over the last 2 years.
While the vaccine for oxycodone is in phase 1 trials and still has phase 2 and phase 3 to go, Pravatoni says they are developing them for heroin and other drugs as well.
This is the first clinical trial ever for our opioid vaccine, and if this works, then we'll open up the field for other medications so that other folks working on, cocaine, methamphetamine, or whatever other type of vaccine that could still help people, that will sort of open, create a precedent for other teams that are working on this.
Comer says it will be a while before the vaccine is commercially available, but they hope to eventually create a multivalent vaccine.
Our overall goal is to develop a series of vaccines.
I'm Chloe Nordquist reporting.
During the pandemic, times have been tough, and some people are turning to new ways to make money. More on that after the break.
Sunday nights, Newsy takes you to the edge. Exploring untold stories.
It's literally an existential threat.
Going far beyond the headlines.
Today, social media is the real world.
Hey, grandkids. There needs to be a bridging of the gap.
In real life, a next generation news magazine. New episodes, Sunday nights at 8:30, 7:30 Central, only on Newsy.
Welcome back to In the Loop. The pandemic left millions of Americans financially insecure, and while the economy has certainly made progress, it hasn't happened fast enough for everyone to feel stable. And that's meant that some people have tried new things to make money, like becoming an egg donor. Some women have reportedly made more than $8,000 for a one-time egg donation to a fertility clinic. The process itself is also pretty pricey. Penn Medicine reports the average cost of a single IVF cycle can cost between $10,000 to $15,000. The industry has recently exploded, and it's expected to grow even more over the next decade. Experts say there's a number of factors contributing to that, one being a rise in infertility. Data from the Centers for Disease Control shows 1 in 8 couples of reproductive age face infertility. That's approximately 7.3 million couples in the US. Advocates say egg donors and sperm donors are helping men and women who can't conceive naturally have a family. Criticism, on the other hand, ranges from exploitation to eugenics, and some of them say that argument hinges on the lack of regulation in the industry. Just last week, an IVF mix-up made headlines out of LA after 2 California couples gave birth to each other's babies after an accidental switch at a fertility clinic.
Alexander and I are devastated. We missed an entire year of our daughter's life. I didn't get to experience being pregnant with her or birthing her. We missed her entire newborn period. We never saw our baby's entrance into the world or cuddled her in her first seconds of life.
And that's not the only wild story out there. So it got us wondering if there are any efforts to put more standards and regulations in place when it comes to this growing industry. Newsy correspondent Amber Strong looks into that question.
I am just so happy to be moving forward and making some progress.
Thanks to candid conversations from influencers like entrepreneur Anna Victoria.
This is the day that I'm feeling it. I'm feeling more bloated. I feel like I've just been poked over and over.
And public figures like Senator Tammy Duckworth and Michelle Obama.
We had to do IVF. I think it's the worst thing that we do to each other as women, not share the truth about our bodies and how they work and how they don't work.
The concept of using in vitro fertilization, or IVF, to achieve pregnancy is becoming more of an open conversation. According to the latest data from the Society for Assistive Reproductive Technology, or SART, 77,256 babies in the U.S. were born via assisted reproductive technologies in 2019, an increase of more than 2,600 from the year before. Here's how it works on a basic level. During IVF, mature eggs are united with sperm in a lab. At some point, those fertilized embryos are then transferred to the uterus in hopes of producing a pregnancy. The technology has opened up new possibilities for families, but it's not without its issues.
Alexander and I are devastated. We missed an entire year of our daughter's life.
A recent mix-up turned the now common practice into a nightmare for one couple, when their fertilized embryo was swapped and inserted into the uterus of another patient.
We never even knew that something like this could happen. It wasn't even on our radar. How could this happen? But now we realize that the fertility industry is a mess.
So at the Center for Fertility and Reproductive Medicine, we do take a multidisciplinary approach.
Dr. Emily Youngheim, a professor at Northwestern University's Feinberg School of Medicine, says occurrences like this are rare. But the growing trend of freezing embryos for future use can increase the potential for mix-ups.
When you think about the inventory and the
attention to detail and how careful you need to be due to the risk of having all of those things in storage, you could imagine how these types of things could happen.
The industry has been called out before for a lack of federal regulation, but that doesn't mean it's completely void of oversight. For nearly 3 decades, clinics have been bound by the Fertility Success Rate and Certification Act, which requires embryo labs to be certified by an approved non-federal program. It also requires clinics to report their success rates. Clinics are also bound by the FDA for matters of drug and device safety. But federal oversight of the industry as a whole doesn't exist. Instead, it's more of self-regulation, where some clinics work to meet the guidelines set by the nonprofit SART.
What do we mean by start with SART?
SART members are required to follow industry standards created in part by SART and a group of their peers from the American Society for Reproductive Medicine. They are also monitored to assure things like honesty in marketing and advertising. According to SART, as of 2018, 86% of IVF clinics were members of their organization. Still, mistakes can happen. Younghind says there are ways patients can be their own best advocates.
What is the certification of the physicians that I'm working with? Are they board certified in reproductive endocrinology and infertility? Do I have friends who've gone there who feel strongly about their docs and comfortable with them?
She also says incidents like this can cause doctors and labs to ask vital questions too and make changes for the better. Amber Strong, Newsy, Washington.
After the break, we're talking about a Native American national monument that's seen some big changes in recent years. We're digging into the impact of those changes next. The Bears Ears National Monument is sacred land for tribal communities in Utah and is home to an estimated 100,000 archaeological sites. Then President Obama made it a national monument in 2016, the first ever created at the request of Native communities. The monument's status has been up in the air since former President Donald Trump dramatically reduced its size, a decision that has been challenged in court. But just last month, President Joe Biden reversed the Trump administration's move. National correspondent Vanessa Michania spoke to tribal leaders to get their perspective on the political back and forth over this monument.
Bears Ears, a 1.35 million acre national monument that holds different meanings to different people. For one, it's a backpacker's remote paradise. It also contains clues to 14,000 years of human history with ruins and petroglyphs left by the ancient Pueblo people. But to understand how special Bears Ears is to Utah's indigenous people, its stewards asked you to see it not as land, but as one would view a cathedral or a temple.
If we can put it in the context that this is also someone's place of worship, where their most intimate kinds of spirituality is practiced, it differentiates itself from the ordinary kinds of places that we go just for outdoor access.
Patrick Gonzalez-Rogers is the executive director of the Bears Ears Intertribal Coalition, a group with political representatives from 5 Utah tribes who advocate for and protect the land that not only serves as a reminder of where they came from, but helps them actively maintain a connection to their culture.
What has occurred in the Bears Ears is a fairly portable model for other entities to look at as we go forward with other issues of public lands.
Created in 2016, Bears Ears was the first ever national monument established by the request of Native Americans to be managed federally alongside Native people. What was soon discovered was that protection could not be taken for granted.
How a national monument in a stroke of a pen could undergo that much reduction was quite alarming.
Vaughn Haydenfeld is the president of nonprofit Friends of Cedar Mesa. Their mission is to help the public understand how to visit Bears Ears respectfully and has advocated for its protection.
It was just devastating.
In 2017, the Trump administration reduced Bears Ears by 85%, leaving behind 2 separate non-contiguous areas. It also reduced a nearby monument by half, opening up the rest of the lands to be leased for energy exploration, including uranium mining. The Intertribal Coalition and Friends of Cedar Mesa, alongside other organizations, lobbied the new administration to reverse that order, calling it a violation of the Antiquities Act. In October, President Biden expanded the bounds once again. However, the tribe's fight for Bears Ears is not over. The Utah Attorney General called this reversal disappointing, saying the president's decision to enlarge the monuments again is a tragic missed opportunity. It fails to provide certainty as well as funding for law enforcement, research, and other protections. Lawsuits are expected to be filed by the state.
If this was, some kind of incredible piece of missionary architecture, people would just have a totally different vantage.
While the future of Bears Ears is still up in the air, Patrick hopes the voices of Native Americans are not only included, but respected and upheld in conversations about public lands.
The tribes offer a way to think about land management in a different way, and this is through traditional and native knowledge.
I'm Vanessa Mishanya.
And we're always looking for more feedback on this show, so please share your thoughts with us or whatever you'd like to see us cover by posting on the social media platform of your choice using the hashtag #NewsyInTheLoop. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and just in time for us to loop back around on our top stories. Most of us might take for granted that we have easy access to clean running water, but in many parts of the US, that's not a guarantee. Aging infrastructure can often spread lead or other toxic chemicals into a community's water supply. We saw it in Flint, Michigan, where for nearly 5 years, residents had water contaminated with high levels of lead. And now, across the state in Benton Harbor, Michigan, residents have been using bottled water for more than a month after the state reported high levels of lead in its water. In Newark, New Jersey, contaminated water also drew attention around 2018. And after organized pressure from grassroots activists, the city finally took on a 10-year plan to replace the pipes. But only 3 years later, 22,000 lines have already been replaced. And then we took a look at fertility and the rising popularity of egg donation. The pandemic left millions of Americans financially insecure, and while the economy has certainly made progress, it hasn't happened fast enough for everyone to feel stable. And that's meant that some people have tried new things to make money, like becoming an egg donor. Some women have reportedly made more than $8,000 for a one-time egg donation to a fertility clinic. The process itself is also pretty pricey. Penn Medicine reports the average cost of a single IVF cycle can cost between $10,000 to $15,000. The industry has recently exploded, and it's expected to grow even more over the next decade. Experts say there's a number of factors contributing to that, one being a rise in infertility. Data from the Centers for Disease Control shows 1 in 8 couples of reproductive age face infertility. That's approximately 7.3 million couples in the US. Advocates say egg donors and sperm donors are helping men and women who can't conceive naturally have a family. Criticism, on the other hand, ranges from exploitation to eugenics. And some of them say that argument hinges on the lack of regulation in the industry. Just last week, an IVF mix-up made headlines out of LA after 2 California couples gave birth to each other's babies after an accidental switch at a fertility clinic.
Alexander and I are devastated. We missed an entire year of our daughter's life. I didn't get to experience being pregnant with her or birthing her.
That's it for this episode of In the Loop. I'm Bianca Piscini. You can also catch all new episodes every weekday at 9 Eastern. In the meantime, to stay up to date with all the world's happenings, keep it right here on Newsy.